All right, so everybody, look me in the eyes and bear with me, all right? Because this one's a roller coaster. What we are looking at here is a 3 versus 3 tournament, not quite conquest, but a little bit conquest. All right, bear with me. So each team has brought 5 decks, and in those decks, they are allowed to overlap each region one time, but they are not allowed to play the same regional composition twice. For example, you can play Freljord twice, but you can't bring 2 Freljord Shadow Isle decks. Each team has to play each player within the first 3 games, and then for games 4 and 5, if it comes to that, you can play any players that you want, but you can't have the same player play games 4 and 5. So everybody gets to play. One person gets to play once, 2 people get to play twice if you are going to a game 5. Once you win with a deck, your team is not allowed to play it anymore. If you have lost with a deck, any other teammate can go ahead and pick it up. Once you have won with 3 of your decks, then you are declared the winner of the match. And because this is an invitational, they are straight away into the top 8, so this will be a single elimination event. To give you guys an understanding of what we're working with over here, in case I do get any of these players wrong, is I am looking at the profile pictures that each player has submitted and trying to line that up with the face cam. The problem is that some of the players have different hair colors between the picture and their face cam, as well as some of them wear glasses and then take them off. It's a work in progress.
Well,
I wish we had a better way to do this, but
nobody can beat Jelly's haircut.
oh no, Jelly's the best. I think it's a wig because Jelly has black hair in his face cam.
I think it's a wig too.
Yeah,
because on the side, the hair it just kind of looks like it's sitting on top of his head instead of like being a part of his head. If that makes sense.
Imagine if that was actually his hair. Like you're just walking around and you see Jelly in public and you're like, "That's it. That's the pinnacle of humanity."
So looks like we're gonna have good old-fashioned scouts versus good old-fashioned mid-range Frostbite here on the side of Kamdong. So we'll see who's able to come on top.
Yeah, I mean it's it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but that's just kind of the meta that we found ourselves in.
Yeah, and something to mention too. We saw this a lot in the West, right? Is mid-range Frostbite.
Yeah.
We're like, wow, okay, this deck kind of got a nerf. You had the Assessor get changed to cost more, which is definitely a big deal. And in general, it didn't feel like the deck would be that great, but might not be like an S tier deck right now, but it is still highly competitive, and it's still, no matter what they do to it, always seems to be really consistent, right? So we'll see if that consistency continues its streak of being a pretty highly played competitive deck. It looks like it is in Korea. We'll see if it can actually take home a victory here.
I'm not super sold on the deck still. We did just see Black Boss pick up a win in Ring Cup Brazil with this, so I'm a little more willing to say, okay, yeah, this is a pretty good deck, but I don't know, man. I feel like there's better things out there I could be doing with either my Freljord or Noxus. I think it makes a lot more sense in this pseudo region lock tournament where I get to bring 2 Freljord decks and 2 Noxus decks. Because I think we've seen, just from the slight peek that I've gotten at the lineup, so we don't have the deck list, but at the bottom of the screen, sometimes they will put up the 5 regional compositions of the decks that the players have brought, and pretty much everybody has brought Freljord Noxus Bilgewater, and I mean, I thought it was TF Swain, but so far we've seen Pirate Dagger out of the 2 teams that we've already seen.
Yeah, I gotta say, there is not a whole lot of TF Swain going on, so I wonder if we're finally starting to see the downfall of that deck. However, that deck is obviously still a great choice as well in the competitive environment. But for the time being, we see Troll Chant come out, and god damn is this a great card. We have seen this card come out time and time again, and always seems to make a big impact when it is played.
I was a little surprised not to see Culling Strike down onto the War Chef on turn 2. I'm a little curious as to what we're saving that for, or maybe we're just thinking we're going to go for a big Reckoning play a little bit later on. Let's play card efficiently and not get this Culling Strike down, save it for a Frostbite effect later on to combo that off. But we're still so far from the Reckoning, and now we have the Reckoning online because we have the Ash in our hand.
Yeah, wow. So this Reckoning probably going to get a lot of value in this matchup as long as he can get some sort of 5 attack unit to stick on the side of Kamdong. So we'll see what he decides to play here. I imagine Ash. Ash would be able to get an attack in as the board currently stands, as well as it would Frostbite the Brightsteel Protector.
The awkward part you're going to run into is your opponent has Riposte. And sure, you can Brittle Steel to get around that, but I would think that you want to save the Brittle Steel to protect something from a single combat in response to the Reckoning. Taking it one step further on that awkwardness, you don't have mana for Brittle Steel Reckoning next turn.
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, we do have to be concerned about spell banking the mana here to make sure that we can actually play this Reckoning, because Reckoning isn't going to do you so hot if you're actually not able to play it on the turn you want to play it. And that's one of the difficult things about playing Reckoning early in the game, especially in a matchup like this against Scouts, is you do need it early. I mean, this is Scouts, right? I mean, they are going to try to go hard and fast as early as possible, and you need to be able to respond with an early Reckoning. And it really limits the amount of choices that you have as far as other cards to play. And you have to make sure that something like this Ash can stick.
We're not going to see it out of Sourf here, but we have seen in the past players hang on to this Reckoning for just a turn too long, and something like a turn 4 or turn 5 Bannerman will come down, followed by a Genevieve Elmhart, and all of the sudden, all of these 3 attack units are at 5 attack. Your Reckoning is clearing out a minimal part of the board. It's really just going to be the Bannerman that buffed everything else up, and maybe a War Chef or a Fleet Feather Tracker, and really, it's just nowhere near enough. And I think now we are going to see the Brittle Steel have to be proactively used onto this Bright Steel Protector. It is going to clear out a bit of the board, and I think this means we have to use the Culling Strike next turn onto the Fleet Feather Tracker to make sure that we don't lose our Ash to this misfortune. Overall, looking at the player's hands and how we expect things to play out over the next couple of turns, Sourf is going to start to take control of the board.
Yeah, and I mean, this kind of stinks on the part of Cam, right? I mean, he is kind of forced into this play because you can't wait out that Reckoning. You're going to lose way too much tempo. And it feels bad because you would have had a really good Reckoning on the following turn, but
Unyielding Spirit.
Wow. Okay, we haven't seen that card in a while.
It's been a minute, Unyielding Spirit, my friend. How are you doing? It's been so long.
Wow, what the heck? When did that get in here? Okay, well, we have Unyielding Spirit once again being played in a Demacia deck. We'll see if this is able to make an impact right now in this game. Wow. I'm actually, all right, this is a little spicy now. I kind of like this deck.
And speaking of spicy, on the side of Kamdong, I don't know if you peeped the top deck, but that is a Tall Tales. We are once again playing the Yeti version of this deck.
And this is main decked, right?
I don't see a way it was randomly generated.
Are we positive? like on a scale of 1 to 10, how positive are we that Tall Tales is in his deck list?
I'd say 100%.
Okay, I'm just checking. Wow. I actually, personally, I love Tall Tales, but I don't know. I mean, it seems like it'd be kind of hard to get a Yeti out, right? Like you need to get Trapper into 1-cost Yeti.
Yeah, I mean, there is a 1-cost Yeti on the top of Kamdong's deck, so he will have that Yeti Tall Tales available on the next turn.
I guess in this particular matchup, too, like
it works out pretty
bodies, well. Yeah, that's really, that's a lot of good trading, and it becomes incredibly easy for Cam to be able to get a 5-attack body to stick for this Reckoning.
Yeah, the concern that you always have when trying to get off these early Reckonings is that your earlier units are 5/3s and 5/1s. It's not until generally turn 5 that you can start sticking 5/5s and things that are always going to survive single combat, unless you can get a Yeti a little bit earlier.
So my concern here, though, on the side of on the side of Cam, is Sourf that has 2 Radiant Guardians, which are going to trade incredibly well with these 5/5s that are going to start coming down on the side of Cam. So as much as those Yetis feel like they would be a really good answer, not anymore. Especially with Unyielding Spirit. Like this is, I can't believe these 2 cards right now, Tall Tales and Unyielding Spirit. It's going to be a much different game than we're used to.
He is scaring the heck out of me by pulling that Ranger's Resolve as far out of his hand as he is.
Having PTSD Boulevard.
A little bit. I mean, you were there for the infamous. The infamous Trick 2G.
Oh, Trick 2G. How I loathe. Oh, my God. Yep. Tough does not work twice. It does not stack for those of you who may or may not be new to the game. But we'll see what Sourf decides to go with next here. It's kind of awkward. You obviously don't want to play the Radiant Guardian. Would much rather have it have the Tough and the Lifesteal.
Unyielding Spirit onto the Radiant Guardian works here. There's nothing that your opponent has or can have to actually stop that one. Though we have seen Frostbite midrange decks win through, unyielded Radiant Guardians in the past just because an Ash can come down online and it'll constantly stun that out as the strongest unit on the board.
Yep.
But there's no Ash available or any Frostbite in general on the side of Kamdong, who is actually just going to pass it over without attacking.
Now, I think it's left to right is the answer, but I just want to double check. If both Radiant Guardians hit, one has Unyielding Spirit and Ash attacks, it's going to be the one all the way to the left that gets frostbitten?
Oh, it's either all the way to the left or whichever one was on field first. And honestly, I'm not sure.
All right, who's working on this rule book? Is anybody working on writing this? So we see, all right, Genevieve now coming down off the top deck. That is a hell of an attack turn. And wow, still not really prioritizing this Unyielding Spirit. So very much kind of like a backup plan, it seems, on the side of Sourf. Looking to get some of these trades down first. And this 6/6 Radiant Guardian, even with the 6/6 Yeti, is still going to do a ton of work this turn.
I mean, I understand not firing off the Unyielding Spirit at the first opportunity onto the Radiant Guardian. You're sitting at 20 life. The 5/5 tough is going to get enough value in this matchup. You can look for a higher priority target. Maybe you even want to throw it down onto your Misfortune. But we're worried about a Culling Strike coming out of your opponent. Or Genevieve would actually be a pretty decent target as well, constantly getting those double scout attacks every single turn. So I don't blame him for holding off on it. Maybe he is looking for the opportunity to get it down onto that Misfortune.
Wow. So we'll see. I mean, there's also the chance that Cam goes for Reckoning here. It doesn't look like he's going to go that route. Opting for another Yeti blocker, which honestly is the better play, I feel. I mean, all of your Yetis trade pretty well with everything minus this Radiant Guardian, which you don't necessarily have to block with a Yeti. So you can get some pretty good trades off on the War Chefs, on the Misfortune. And I imagine this Genevieve will probably pull the Trapper first before trading with another Yeti.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if there's any universe where Sourf actually has lethal this turn with the Riposte. It's not looking like it, but I think if we didn't start playing Yetis now, then, there was a little bit of potential for it, or at least to get us down so low that we just die to a Misfortune attack on the following turn if we can't actually kill that with the Culling Strike.
Yeah, we'll see. And I gotta throw this out there. I mean, with this mid-range Frostbite deck being, down to 12, it just seems like the biggest weakness of this deck is just that every piece of damage sticks. And with a lot of these aggressive decks that we're seeing nowadays, we have Pirate Aggro, we have the Scouts deck we're looking at now. Like, it's so easy to get them within kill range where, okay, great, you have these Yetis on board, but like you're saying, I mean, you're looking for game with Riposte right now. That's very much a possibility after this Genevieve clears up some of this board. And I don't think like you said, I don't think there's lethal this turn, but just the fact that we're already in the realm of being able to try to calculate lethal here, I think, is one of the big drawbacks of playing mid-range Frostbite.
Ooh, okay, so we're going to go for a kill onto the Yeti straight away. Using the Riposte a little proactively, do we just respond with Reckoning? Ooh. This Misfortune isn't too far off of leveling, I think.
I think it's still 2 attacks away. I think it's 2 of 4 right now with how those arrows are lit up.
That's what I'm thinking as well, but that's still scary close.
Yeah, any amount of progress towards a Misfortune level up is just like not fun.
Well, that and the fact that the War Chef would actually put the Genevieve up to a 9/6, so it would survive the next unit that it pulls. I think, yeah, the Reckoning is probably the only play you have available to you here.
Yeah, and now, unfortunately, Sourf not able to play the Riposte to save anything like the MF, but we'll still be able to get a decent attack in. We'll be able to trade with one of these 5/5s if he wants, and then also attack with the Radiant Guardian. I mean, do you just take this attack, take the trade on both ends, and just clear the field?
I don't think it's necessarily unreasonable to just attack with the Radiant Guardian, because you do have this Ranger's Resolve for the Genevieve, as well as you could Unyielding Spirit it next turn to constantly get 2 attacks and clear out 2 5/5 units. I think that the Genevieve is a little bit too valuable to just trade it for a 5/5 when you have so many opportunities to get more out of it.
It looks like the Radiant Guardian is going to go ahead and go in for the attack. And that's something to think of too, right? Like, Unyielding Spirit on Genevieve. We always think of Unyielding Spirit going on the Radiant Guardian just because, you get the lifesteal. It just keeps you in the game for a really, really long time. But getting 2 Scout challenge attacks every single turn for free, not ever taking damage on a Genevieve, also feels kind of good. Not going to lie.
Yeah, I definitely think that Radiant Guardian is arguably not the best target in this specific matchup. There are, matchups where it is, but on this one, I definitely think I'd rather have the Genevieve just being able to constantly pick off 2 units and get those scout attacks every turn if I do find another Misfortune or a Quinn and get those consistently ticked towards their level up. I think Misfortune is probably like my primo target. That's what I would absolutely love to have it on.
Oh, yeah, the unkillable Misfortune. I'm sure we've all dreamed of that at some point or another, but... Hey, we've gone over this. We've only seen in our whole time casting one time that Misfortune has actually lost a game when leveled. which I still can't even believe that actually happened. Otherwise, you always win in the game with a leveled up Misfortune.
Oh, this is just a super rough spot for our friend Kamdong here on the top, though. It's just so many 5/5s not really lining up into this Radiant Guardian super well. There's the Unyielding Spirit for the other one. There's nothing in your deck for 6 mana, theoretically, that's going to be able to kill the Genevieve in response to a proactive use of the Unyielding Spirit. It would have to be Flash Freeze into Culling Strike. And obviously, we don't have the deck list in front of us, but with yourself playing the Yeti package, I'm hard-pressed to imagine Flash Freeze is another tech card that you found room for.
Yeah, unless you have an Ash on the board, and we don't see an Ash on the board. So I think you're right. I mean, I guess the issue right now is, sure, you have all these Yetis, but against this specific matchup, especially with Unyielding Spirit being played on the side of Sourf, Sourf's 5/5s are just better. Like, we have 5/5s on both sides of the board, and Sourfs are just infinitely better. They get way more value, and we're gonna see here probably some more trades come out. Opts not to play the Unyielding Spirit still, though, really waiting a long time to pull the trigger on that Unyielding.
He doesn't have to do it. I just feel like it would end the game if he did.
I agree. Like, I feel like you just pull the trigger, and I feel like one of the inherent weaknesses of Unyielding Spirit is the fact that it is 8 mana and fast, so it could very easily get negated. So I think it's one of those irrational thoughts again, where it's like, I can't commit 8 mana and still have
it's
my
like, oh yeah, the
6.
6 mana Freljord card that negates fast spells or kills my file.
Like,
Oh no.
It's like,
I think we've talked a lot about that. The cards that don't exist that you play around anyway.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I don't know. I think that definitely matters. I think it does come into play in a lot of these games, and that might be the case here. I mean, we know, obviously, from seeing Cam's hand as well, there's really no way they can counter the Unyielding, but for the time being, looks like Cam not going to take the attack here. Wow. I mean, I guess this makes sense because you'd have to attack with everything to really get any value, and if your opponent is sitting on 4 mana, you kind of have to assume that on the side of Sourf, he's going to have a repost. Now you actually have repost and Unyielding. So is this what he's waiting for? Is this what, like, he just had to have repost on backup in order to play this Unyielding? Do we finally see it?
I would assume we have to, right? Now you are open to something like Harsh Winds into Culling Strike, though, which, just based on the mana that your opponent has, which the repost will not save you from.
Yeah. So, well, all right. Opting to take the attack first. Looks like we're going to see the repost come out here finally. We do have Ice Veil into Culling now. So all this time, we've been waiting for this Unyielding. I swear to God, if we see this Unyielding now come out and then get negated by something like Culling Strike, I don't think that'll happen.
Okay, we are finally playing it, so no opportunity for the Frostbite before the Culling Strike.
Yep, okay.
It took us a while, but we got there. The game is now basically over. I would go ahead and call this a limbo. I don't think even an Ash into Harsh Winds could still swing the game back for Kamdong, but I think outside of specifically that scenario, we're going to see Sourf go ahead and pick up game number 1.
Yeah, there's really no way that Cam's going to be able to get out of this. Wow, man, Unyielding on Genevieve, man. Just looking at this board state and then looking at Unyielding on Genevieve is just like, wow, that's a broken combo. Who let that happen? But it's happening. We're seeing it, and it is going to go ahead and take home, it looks like, this game for the side of Sourf here. And, we were just talking about the games being pretty quick, and look what we did. Now we have a turn 9 game, a Scouts deck versus mid-range Frostbite. I'd be really interested to see the rest of Sourf's list, though, right? It doesn't seem like he's playing as aggressive as a list as we'd usually see out of Scouts. It looks more like mid-rangey.
I want to agree with you, but we also see a Cytherea of Cloudfield in hand, which has to be an aggro version. I think the Radiant Guardian is something that was played in just about every Scout list for quite some time, but really fell to the wayside pretty recently.
And we also see the repost come out. The Grizzled Ranger going to hopefully take down this Aberration Hearthguard, but the Frostbite now coming out. It's one of the bad things, I guess, about Grizzled Ranger is it's always within Brittle Steel range in this particular matchup, being at that 1 health.
Yeah, but I mean, with Sourf being at 20, sure, you can go for an Ice Veil Archer Calling Strike onto the Radiant Guardian. In fact, I feel like you kind of have to. And this is one of these situations that we bring up a lot that we haven't actually seen in quite some time, where Kamdong is in top deck mode, but he has an Avarossan Trapper. And you really don't want to play that Trapper because top decking a Yeti in a situation like this feels terrible.
Yeah, I mean, and that's all right. So that's an argument I've always made for Yeti in the past, right? Like, especially Trapper. Like, okay, feels good. It's a 3/3 for 3. That's decent stats. You get a 1-mana 5/5, but as good as a 1-mana 5/5 is, it replaces another draw, and I know that's kind of like a crappy argument to make to really say that, like, well, okay, that's why the card's bad. I'm not necessarily saying it's bad, but it does come into play, especially in situations like this where now you don't want a 1-mana 5/5. You like that's the last thing that you want to draw, and sometimes that's I guess where the Yeti deck kind of falls out, which is why we don't see like hardcore Yeti builds, because sometimes Yetis are just they're useless. Like you want something that generates more advantage.
Okay, there's Harsh Winds. Piece number 1 of the Harsh Winds Ash puzzle. The problem is that I don't think Kamdong's going to be able to hang on to enough of the board to make it actually matter. And SJW, I think we have entered limbo.
I think we've been in limbo.
I think there was a turn a couple turns earlier where if we had drawn Harsh Winds into Ash, we would have had a chance. But at this point, I think too much of the board is gone.
I mean, all right, Harsh Winds and Ash. Are you thinking like an OTK where you just one turn? Oh. I mean, I guess, but yeah.
No longer a realistic option.
Yeah, it's not. Oh, okay, Captain Farron. He could still draw like Captain Farron into Ash. I mean, that's a thing.
He does. There's no mana for all that. He's losing this turn.
Does he lose this turn?
No, I mean, you're gonna have to use the Harsh Winds this turn.
Yeah, so then you no longer have access to the Harsh Winds for an actual like kill turn. So I think this is gonna actually do it. 100%. Man, I just, once you see that unyielding on that Genevieve, it's like, yeah, not much you can do there. Except that Ash OTK, so it's interesting. And I've talked about this a lot in the past. Ash OTKs always come out of absolutely nowhere. So it's funny that we're towards the end of the game where it looks like Sourf is just 100% in the lead. He's got to take it home. And we're like, but wait. There could be a random, Ash that pops up out of nowhere and kills him from 20-0.
I think the reason that we always see the Ash OTKs come out of nowhere is because it's always either the Ash or the Harsh Winds that is top decked as the last possible second to actually get that one out. And we even see the mana not really working out for Kamdong. Can't get the Captain Farron down in the same turn as that Harsh Winds is going to miss out on a lot of stats on board. And I can't think of anything that he could play in conjunction with it next turn to make a difference either. And he's still got to throw out some blocks here, and we could see Sourf continue to go wide. Yeah, Radiant Guardian going to come down. Might as well throw down that War Chef as well. There's nothing your opponent can have for 4 mana that's really going to scare you off of something like that.
Yeah, you just go
this,
in now.
I think this is just lethal anyway.
Even with because you can still pull something with the Genevieve.
Yeah, and then your weakest two attackers are 5 damage if you buff up the Cytherea with the War Chef. If you buff up Cytherea with War Chef, that's lethal. Anything else, your opponent can live at 1.
Yeah, and I think Sourf is going through the math in his head right now, trying to figure out what line and what attack order everything needs to be in to make this happen. It's really just about making sure you don't screw up the math at this point.
Yep, and it looks like Sourf has screwed up the math at this point. I mean, he's not going to lose any of his units. He's still going to have complete control of the game. Just misses lethal by a turn.
I mean, yeah, he still wins the game. So you were saying put the War Chefs on the Cytherea?
Yeah, because then you need your weakest 2 attackers to represent lethal damage, and now your weakest 2 attackers only represent 4. Yeah. Maybe you found it. Okay, yeah. There we go. Okay.
A
little bit of rearranging going on.
As a rule of thumb, too, usually so that I try to prevent myself from missing stuff like this, you want to try to spread your attack out as even as possible, right? So by buffing the Loyal Badger Bear, obviously that puts it a lot higher than the Cytherea, whereas buffing the Cytherea, it's matching the 3 power, if that makes sense in my weird messed up head. So when everything is more in line with like everything having the same attack, generally speaking, you give yourself a greater chance at lethal because your opponent can't block more damage with 1 block. And it looks like Sourf is going to go ahead, take the victory.
The problem is that Kimjinsol is blonde in the profile picture that they submitted, and they are not blonde on the face cam. And that one threw me for a loop and made it a lot more difficult to figure out, as well as Soga and Sourf are both wearing glasses in their face cams and didn't in their pictures. That's why I'm getting so lost on these.
So in other words, next time, if you guys, for any of you professional esports players out there, if you ever want to mess with casters, wear like masks and costumes and stuff when you take your profile picture, and then change it for when you actually play the game.
I wish I could show you Kimjinsol's submitted picture versus this face cam right here and understand that they do not look like the same person. But by process of elimination, it has to be them.
Well, apologies again if we do get it incorrect. It is what it is. We're trying to do our best here with bringing you guys this English commentary of the Korean King of Runeterra.
So, Soga's playing Prankster Burn.
Yes! Oh, man, I love it. Every iteration of the decks that we've seen today has been, like, either something we don't usually see in general, like just, like, period on the in the West, right? And, or something like, you know, that scout deck that we just saw, which is a completely different take on a otherwise generally pretty like standard deck.
On the side of Kimjin, though, looking like a pretty normal indoor deck. You know, it is what it is. The list seems pretty solved. It looks like a lot of players are going for this. Callista as the only champion. Indoor is the only Freljord card. Generally 2 Wraith Callers. Pretty low on the spells. It's really just Glimpse Beyond, Unspeakable Horror, Shifting Shadows, and Atrocity, if I remember correctly.
And Doom Beast, we're seeing a lot in these now as well. And we do see on the side of Kimjinsol, he already has a Doom Beast in hand, as well as Bark Beast, Callista already as well. So we'll see if he's able to get down this early Callista here.
I kind of like Callista this turn into something like Bark Beast Bladed Caretaker on the following turn to go ahead and get her leveled up, take out your opponent's... Oh, it's awkward because you can only take out one Bark Beast. I don't know how much Kimjin is going to value trying to take out both these Bark Beasts at, you know, as their 1/1s. I don't think that's possible.
Unless you're in Piltover and Zaun and you have a Static Shock in your deck, I don't think it is.
I mean, he can get it done with the, you know, the first one will die to a sapling. The second one will go down to 1 HP. You can finish that off with the Unspeakable Horror, but it's a lot of resources committed to get rid of 1/1s. And now the Prankster is looking a lot more threatening, especially with that Bladed Caretaker that's going to come down in a couple of turns as well.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see this deck in action. I really am. I am 100% Team Soga right now, not gonna lie. Like, I want Prankster Burn to be a thing. I haven't seen it in quite some time since its inception, and Jesus, this is like when the game first came out, right? And like right after closed beta probably is when Prankster Burn. So I'd be curious to see if it does well here.
Okay, so does top deck a 1-drop that isn't named Bark Beast to go ahead and get that one activated. And honestly, Legion Grenadier's not a terrible pickup. That 1 damage can be a difference maker in a matchup like this.
Yeah, such a strong card, too. I mean, ever since that buff from 1 health to 2 health, being a 3/2 as a 2-drop, I mean, that's already good stats. That additional damage could, like you said, come in handy here a little bit later. But we'll see what Kimjin decides to do with these saplings on the attack. Looks like, yep, gonna go ahead and pull at least 1 Bark Beast. Looks like 2, and like you said, unfortunately, the attacks don't happen simultaneously. So one of these bad boys is gonna get buffed up to a 3/3.
I'm a little surprised. Yeah, I think I like going for the Prankster a little bit more. And now the question is Soga going to defend the Prankster, or are we going to fire off that Get Excited at the Callista?
Ooh. That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't even notice the Get Excited because I'm like not used to seeing Prankster Burn in action. I'm like, oh, that's right. This deck is actually playing burn cards like Mystic Shot and Get Excited. It's so weird seeing Shadow Isles with Get Excited in hand.
I feel like this makes it more enticing to save the Prankster, but I do think you have to get rid of this Callista while you can.
Yeah, I mean, in past games, I think we just saw it a little bit earlier today too, like, I feel like you always need to prioritize getting rid of Callista, man. Like, it's just such a... That card leveled up is absolutely nuts, and if you let it get out of control, it will just straight win the game 100%.
Also, I do want to clarify on the attack order of Kimjin over here. So we see that the Prankster is going to die second, which might seem a little weird. It seems like you're giving your opponent damage that they shouldn't because the Bark Beast is going to die while the Prankster's still alive. But if we kill the Prankster first, then the Bark Beast is going to evolve. I think that there was an opportunity for Kimjin to hit the Prankster first, kill the Bark Beast, and then go for the Stalking Shadows after combat.
That definitely would have been an interesting line for sure. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to play that because of the Bark Beast. The Bark Beasts make combat very interesting, to say the least. You definitely have to care about the order in which things die, like that Prankster there. But we do see Soga going for the attack now with everything. Yeah, getting the Spiderling with the Elise.
Oh.
Ooh.
I mean, you want to deny the draw, but you really want to get down this Neverglade Collector, and it looks like Soga is going to prioritize the Collector over denying the draw, saying, you know what, my opponent has plenty of cards in hand already. They're having a tough time getting them down. If we give them more cards, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and honestly, Soga doesn't really have a whole lot of cards in hand, so I don't know. I mean, either option, right? Denying it with the Mystic Shot or getting down this Neverglade, he's not really in the greatest spot. This Bladed Caretaker will do some work. We'll get the 2 damage with the Neverglade. If he does use it on his next attack turn, might be able to remove 2 units as well. But he's not in the greatest spot here.
Yeah, he needs to find some kind of refuel in order to get more units on board to feed into this Neverglade. The 2 Bladed Caretakers are going to do a lot of work, but not immediately. Does have to wait until his next attack turn to really get anything super impactful done.
Yeah, drawing the second Bladed Caretaker too, like that's... It feels kind of bad because he needs cards that do stuff now, and that is probably better played on his next turn. He could play one defensively this turn as well, but if he does want to use both of them offensively, he's going to have to do it over the next 4 turns or so as the attack token swap back and forth.
So this is a card out of Kimjin that we don't see in your sort of standard Endure list, and that is Shroud of Darkness. For those of you that are unfamiliar with this card because you don't see it that often, it is that 1-mana burst speed spell all the way to the right in his hand, and it says the next time you summon an ally this round, give it +1/+0 and spell shield this round. And that is primarily what you're using to protect your Endure when you go in for the attack with it, sort of as a backup to the Atrocity so that you can protect it for the turn. You know, because they did nerf the Endure cost, you can no longer Endure Atrocity until turn 10. But what you can do is spell shield up the Endure on 7, attack with it. Oh, I can't remove it just yet. I go to remove it next turn. Now I have Atrocity mana again.
Yeah, I do. I really like that card for that reason. I mean, it has other uses in some, aggro decks like spell shielding. Jesus, what's that bird? I can never remember that bird's name. The 4/1 with Fearsome when it's Nightfall.
Stygian Onlooker?
Stygian Onlooker, yeah. So ideally, it's that's a great turn 2 play. Getting that in an aggro deck. Yeah, it's, I guess, right? Isn't Stygian
I always
a bird?
thought it was like
It's an owl.
I thought it was a wolf, but yeah, it does look like an owl.
Wolf?
I don't know. I thought it was a wolf. Yeah, I thought it was like a...
Jeez, what kind of wolves are you around your area? Jeez, do they fly?
I don't have... What kind of birds are in Rhode Island that look like that?
All right, touche. That's a good point. But yeah, I mean, that's probably the lesser known use of it to be used in aggro like that. You don't really get as much value using it on the day who do it. You can guarantee anything that guarantees an Atrocity going off is pretty good in my book.
Yeah, it can just be a little bit awkward. We do play super on curve typically, and as we see, even going into turn 7, Kimjin didn't have the spell mana available, so wouldn't have that combo even if he wanted to. And does need to find an Endure pretty soon. I think the Stalking Shadows has a good chance at coming down here. It is sort of the best activator for these Nightfall cards at the moment, but if we want to play mana efficiently, maybe we do fire off the Spell Shield spell to start off the turn in order to get down both the Doom Beast and the Lunari Priestess.
Yeah, and I mean, crucially on the side of Soga, we do have refuel now. You're talking about it earlier. We have the Glimpse Beyond. He is going to start getting some of these procs off on this Neverglade Collector. And on the side of Kimjin, I mean, there's not a whole lot of good removal for the Neverglade. Like, it's going to stick and it's going to do work unless it pulls out an Atrocity. And I really, obviously, don't think you want to use an Atrocity on it.
Did you peep that beautiful graphic that they put up in the center so we could actually see the Shroud of Darkness?
Wait, what? No. Did I miss it?
Yeah, it was 2 Bark Beasts and a Hapless Aristocrat offered up. I just love it, though, because it was Kimjin, Shroud of Darkness. He's not the player we're spectating. Generally, we would miss out on the options presented to him, but spectator win.
One day, spectator mode will be amazing. Gonna see the attack here on the side of Soga. Using those sweet saplings, gonna get the value with the Neverglade Collector. Also sending the Neverglade into attack, feeling pretty safe. Like, okay, He'll get 1 chip damage maybe with one of these hapless aristocrats, but not worried really about it getting removed. Not even going to block it.
So I really liked sending in the Neverglade Collector here because in theory it entices your opponent to block it because it is more attack than the Spiderling, and that lets your Spiderling survive to the next turn so that you actually have a good target for the Blighted Caretaker. Because if you didn't attack with the Spiderling or attack with the Neverglade Collector, then you're kind of left in this awkward spot where either you can't attack with your Caretaker or it is going to get, killed by one of these blockers, and then you don't have a great target for the Blighted Caretaker next turn. And, Kimjin actually just kind of sniffs that one out and plays around it.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's probably a pretty good read on the side of Kimjin then. No good targets left for something like Blighted Caretaker. And honestly, at this point, Blighted Caretaker could very much finish off the game coming up next turn. It's so crazy to think of how many more options Kimjin has in hand that just don't matter. It's like, as long as Neverglade is here, Neverglade will slowly but surely win the game for Soga, and that's one of the reasons why I've always despised this card. I thought it actually needed a change a little while back, but I do think it's decently balanced now, especially with the release of Call of the Mountain and whatnot. So we'll see if it's able to close out the game here.
So I'm looking at the options that Kimjin has available to actually kill this Neverglade Collector, and this doesn't feel great, but you probably have to do something like Shroud of Darkness onto your Doom Beast and then Atrocity it into that Neverglade Collector, because there's not a lot of 4 attack units in this deck in order to actually be able to remove that.
Yeah, and here comes another hapless aristocrat. I mean, at this point, I feel like he needs to pull the trigger on Atrocity onto Neverglade, but he actually still doesn't have anything that will even do the damage. He needs to kill this Cursed Keeper somehow. Ooh, this feels really bad.
Oh, I don't think that Kimjin's going to be able to get this one done. I think that the Neverglade Collector is going to be able to just kind of get this one out, especially given that the Blighted Caretaker and the Mystic Shot just kind of blanket represent 5 damage in hand.
Well, so I kind of like this. Let me know if you agree or not, too. On the side of Soga, I kind of like this deck building choice, specifically because there's not a lot of removal in general right now because of a lot of people playing Targon, a lot of slow stuff, etc., etc. Neverglade Collector, obviously, at least in this matchup, has been sticking around for quite some time doing work. And I feel like that's the case for a lot of other matchups where this card can kind of stick around and just generate a ton of value.
Yeah, I've noticed that even there have been a resurgence of Battlesmith Demacia decks lately. And anytime that you see that pop up, it's kind of a meta call that there's just absolutely no removal in the format.
Did you just say Battlesmith?
Yes.
Wait, whoa. Where the heck did you see that?
Ladder, and then a couple of deck lists on Twitter.
Oh my god. All right, I'll take your word for it, Boulevard.
I don't know how popular it is. I don't know if it's because I've seen it at least 2 or 3 times on Ladder, and I feel like that's usually an indication that somebody popular played it, and everyone's like, "All right, let's do this."
So one person thought it was cool, and now everybody else is just, I'm gonna give this.
That's generally how it goes. Yeah.
It's like one person decided to play Teemo Jungle one day, and then what do you know? Everybody's playing Teemo Jungle.
So I think that even if Soga goes in for, an all-out attack, and then we just see a slew of blocks out of Kimjin, that's still just going to be lethal for Soga.
Yeah. I do think that Soga's going to be able to take this home. He can just send the hapless aristocrats, not really caring. He can send a Blighted... I mean, his board's kind of awkward for the Blighted Caretaker. He won't really get full value. What? Okay. Okay. So the Atrocity is actually going to come out on the Callista, valuing the Callista, still doing 1 damage with the Neverglade. Now there's room for the wow. Okay.
So this actually goes back to the turn that Soga had attacked with the Neverglade Collector, and it wasn't blocked by one of the hapless aristocrats of Kimjin, because that would have put it at 3 HP, and it would have been killable by this Atrocity on either the Bark Beast or the Legion Grenadier. So, kind of big-brained it at the time, but in the long term, actually ends up hard losing out on the trade to the point where it is going to cost him this game.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it a while ago that, yeah, sure, it feels bad to have to use Atrocity on something like Neverglade, but I think in this particular matchup, you kind of have to spot on the side of Kimjin, all right, This Neverglade isn't getting removed by anything other than Atrocity. I think I just have to do this and just be okay with it. Because you have plenty of cards. It's not like Kimjin using the Atrocity is going to put them behind in card advantage. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think not taking that block really put them behind there. And, yeah,
And now that is just lethal with the Bladed Caretaker.
Wow.
Ooh, could be another 3-0 set.
So Prankster Burn taking it there. Soga over Kimjin. Let's go.
So we're going to have RampSol versus Scouts.
Nice. All right. So actually the first ASOL of the game, of the day here.
Nope. We saw a LuxSol mirror earlier.
Oh, sorry. LuxSol. Okay. Sorry. I'm used to seeing like Trundle Aurelion Soul, and the first game that we saw was really weird LuxSol decks. I don't know what the heck it was with those, but we are seeing ASOL here again. We'll see if there's more of the dragon shenanigans that we saw in those LuxSol decks. And very curious about these Scout decks as well. Let's see if there's another different variation on Scouts like we saw previously as well.
Ooh, okay. Avalanche picked up in the opening hand for DK. I feel like okay, there we go. I was about to say, I feel like every time I've seen Trundle ASOL, they either open Wording Stone Trundle or double Avalanche. It has to be one of the two. For a second here, I thought DK was going to miss out on that, but actually does get the Wording Stone off the top, so it does have that combo available.
Man, and that's like, this is one of the dream hands you probably want with this deck, going against really any deck. I mean, you have the Wording Stones like you mentioned. Wording Stones ramps into a turn 4 Trundle, which is absolutely just so good. Avalanche obviously will deal with the board as well if needed. And we even have Star Shaping. In case we take a little bit of damage, we can heal back up with the Star Shaping and get an additional Celestial card.
And there goes Star Shaping. I can't imagine you discard any other card in this hand.
No, you definitely can't. Out of all of them, I mean, they're all good cards, but I think Star Shaping is probably the worst one out of the Avalanche, Trundle, and Wording Stones.
I was going to say, I think Messenger comes down here just because you don't really have anything else that fits the curve super well. And speaking of the curve, Pegasos is completely barren from turn 2 onward.
Yeah, so if DK has one of the better hands for this deck, Pegasos does not have the greatest, but does get the War Chefs, able to get that down on turn 2 here. I imagine we'll just see the Messenger drop down. Looks like after the attack, maybe.
Yeah, thinking about just passing this one over. You are going to eat 2 damage. I don't think you necessarily want to block the War Chef with the Messenger because you are just so far off of actually playing that Avalanche, because you're probably going to be Wording Stone on 3, Trundle on 4, and maybe then we throw down the Avalanche. But depending on the attacks that come out of Pegasos on sort of that off turn, it's possible that your Avalanche is going to kill your own Wording Stone.
Yeah, and plus the Messenger. I mean, you could attack with it maybe. This is going to be kind of weird to navigate for sure.
I think that the Wording Stone into Trundle is just strictly better than the Avalanche, so I understand not getting that Messenger down immediately because, maybe your opponent does just kill it with the Fleet Feather Tracker, and then you're left with this useless Spacey Sketcher. Your Avalanche isn't pairing into your opponent's board nearly as well. It's probably not a play Pegasos would have made, but it is one of those things that you go over in your head when you're thinking, what is the worst outcome for the plays that I'm making?
Yeah, and I think that Trundle is better, and again, you have always mentioned how good Regeneration is. It's strictly because of that regeneration keyword, right? I mean, the longer you're able to have something with regeneration on the field, the more value it's going to get, especially in this matchup. I mean, it's going to be a priority for Pegasos to be able to remove that Trundle. We actually see 2 Trundles now, so even if it does get removed, we're going to see another one drop down. And the Trundle's just going to be able to eat up any units that Pegasos plays down here. But we are obviously going to see a turn 6 Genevieve, so we'll see if something like that is going to be able to get rid of this Trundle.
It's so weird because, the Genevieve still has to sacrifice herself to trade for the Trundle. We are going to be 1 turn off of actually playing the Ice Pillar and leveling the Trundle when the Genevieve does come down. But if Genevieve comes down, kills my Trundle, I can just play another Trundle next turn, throw down 2 Ice Pillars. Now Genevieve doesn't kill my Trundle anymore. She just dies the first time she runs into it because I'm a 5/7 base. I have 2 Pillars down, and all of a sudden I get to completely start destroying your board.
Yeah, now it is something to note that the Genevieve will only be able to kill the Trundle right now if it is attacking with the War Chefs, with her generally being a 5/5. So can't use the Scout attack, but we'll still be able to get the sweet 2 trades with the Genevieve, maybe on something like Messenger into the Trundle. We'll see what the board state looks like here in a couple of turns. What's your thoughts on Troll Ravager? Do you like that card as a 4-drop in this deck? I feel like it was very underrated when it first came out.
I think that everybody sort of rated the Trundle cards correctly, where it's difficult to find a deck to actually fit them in. I mean, we knew that Behold as an archetype probably wasn't going to come out as a mechanic. Like, you're not going to see a Behold deck, and it is really just Troll Ravager and very rarely Augur or Faces of the Old Ones that you're seeing come out of it. And I think that a 4-mana 3/5 is a reasonable enough stat line for you to want to play that, even if you don't get the regen down onto it. But I don't know if you've had the opportunity to get one down with regen. Oh man, does it feel good.
Oh yeah, no, it does. It's regen again, very very strong keyword. Always good for trading too. So we'll see if this Trundle is able to do some work here, get some trades down. Even just this attack. I mean, if the Trundle attacks, actually, there's no way to use the single combat. I was gonna say, do we see something like a single combat kill the Trundle this turn without the Genevieve? But unfortunately, no second unit with 3 attack here to actually get that job done.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward just because you don't have, sort of that War Chef attack to be able to buff something up. And I don't think that a Avalanche is really the most unreasonable sort of play here.
On this turn.
Yeah, just go for the Avalanche, clear out most of your opponent's board, get the barrier off the Fleet Feather.
See, okay, so I feel like he's going for Spacey Sketcher to maybe bait something else out before the Avalanche. But, like, even if your opponent has some other card to play, I feel like you don't actually... I feel like you're not actually going to get anything baited out there. Like, your opponent, if you're on 4 mana, your opponent has to know that you're trying to bait something out, right?
Yeah. Now we are open to the Icequake, though. And I'm trying to math this out. I think Icequake does let Genevieve straight up kill the Trundle.
Well, it gives... No.
Because
minus 3 attack.
Yeah.
Oh, but
then Trundle falls... Oh, no, she will still trade onto it because she'll be at 2 attack. Trundle will still be at 1. She'll take 2... Okay, yeah. So the way that it works out is she would still have to trade her own life for the Trundle.
See if we see the Icequake. It's not often we see Icequake. And again, this is not a main decked Icequake. This is a Trundle's Icequake.
So I don't love the Icequake because it gets rid of the second copy of Trundle in your hand. Yeah. I mean, obviously the Avalanche doesn't do you a whole lot of good this turn either.
Yeah.
The fact that the War Chef is going to live, and actually I think War Chef gives Genevieve the capability to just eat the Trundle.
Yeah, War Chef is actually the only reason why Genevieve can kill the Trundle this turn. I mean, unless obviously we see the single combat, so there's something that can be done with that, I believe, as well. But there's also Relentless Pursuit. So, I mean, does he... Well, okay, no. If he Relentless Pursuits, then you definitely Icequake if they attack and then Relentless Pursuit. So, I don't know. I feel like you kind of have to Icequake there just to mitigate the damage. I mean, yeah, sure, you lose your Trundle, your second Trundle, but, I mean, you have a Troll Ravager in hand. You have something to reestablish presence on the field. Not to mention, you already do have your A-Soul. I mean, you're still a few turns away from that. But we see a Catalyst of Aeons that we can play next turn as well.
If you Icequake here, I'm pretty sure you eat like 10 damage this turn. Sorry, not quite 10. I think you would eat 6.
If Relentless Pursuit is played, you're saying.
Yeah, so if you were to Icequake here, it's only 6, not 10 because of the War Chef. But, your Genevieve would go down to a 2-2. Your War Chef would go down to an 0-4. Trundle would be the only thing left. You attack with War Chef Genevieve, get her up to a 3-3, kill the Trundle. Then you can Relentless Pursuit, then go in for the Scout attack, then go in for another attack and actually push a lot of damage. And then on the side of DK, you're not left with a whole lot.
So now, okay, so this is interesting too. I mean, this Avalanche does essentially accomplish most of what Icequake would have done as far as removing units is concerned, removing 2, and you can still follow up with the Troll Ravager.
Yeah, and I think that right now DK wants to play the Trundle, but is being wary of something like a single combat, just sort of killing that, when this Genevieve is sort of, this is the only turn where she would actually be able to kill the Trundle with a single combat. And maybe you are just fine getting that out of your opponent, but you can play around it.
I don't think you ever play Trundle here. Because of that exact interaction you're talking about, you can't not play around single combat. I really don't like that play on the side of DK. I think you have to play around single combat there.
So if your opponent does single combat, they're pretty low on resources. They're still out the Genevieve. The problem is that if you don't open your turn with the Avalanche and another Genevieve comes out of Pegasus, then all of a sudden you're never going to find time to play this Avalanche.
Yeah.
Oh, and please don't Avalanche after you play the Trundle. Don't do that to me, DK.
I mean, yeah,
He's eyeing it a little bit.
No.
No. Oh.
No.
Remember when you asked me if I thought DK was one of the better players in the game, and I said no?
Okay, yeah. Well, now, yeah, okay. I do not like this at all. Yep, here comes the single combat. This very well might have, I don't want to say thrown the game for DK, but
it was definitely probably about as suboptimally as you could have played that line.
Well, yeah, and I think DK had a pretty good handle on the game, and now this actually puts Pegasus in a position to get back into this.
Didn't necessarily expect Moonsilver into the pillar either, although it does give the Troll Ravager the opportunity to start picking apart the board, but we don't really have a great answer for the Genevieve that's going to come down next turn.
Yeah, but it will be, if the Troll Ravager is able to pick something off here with this pillar, giving the Brightsteel Protector vulnerable, it's definitely a much smaller field than there would have been, which isn't terrible. Wow, terrible. I just said terrible. That goes to show you how many words I say on stream all the time. Jesus. Woo. New word. Sign me up.
Yeah, my problem with the Ravager is that Genevieve's going to be able to just pick this off next turn for, pretty much free. You're pretty low on life. You're really out of options here. We do get to see the Catalyst next turn to maybe help you survive and then get ASOL down the turn after, but ASOL's not going to level. You're not going to have anything else on field. I think that losing the Trundle might have actually just been a total throw on the side of DK.
Yeah. Okay, I got to mention this. Somebody in chat actually mentioned this too. All right, so Ice Pillar specifically says on the card, play refill 8 mana.
Yes.
Did it?
You need to have 8 mana to refill, and you only have 7 mana crystals. So it can't refill more than you have.
So does when something says refill 8 mana, it doesn't ever include spell mana?
No.
So mana only directly refers to regular mana, and spell mana only so is there a word that refers to both?
So the 10 cost Celestial spell, Living Legends, does say refill. I think it says mana and spell mana.
Does it actually say, I'm gonna actually
it might just say refill all of your mana. I'd have to check the specific wording on it, but I didn't really expect that pillar to give him spell mana.
So Living Legends just says refill your mana, which is kind of vague, but I can see the difference between that.
Yeah, I think because it refills the entire thing, whereas this was a specific number.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because that struck me as odd too. I was like, wait, I know it was cost reduced, but that kind of stinks. I mean, it should just refill. It should just give you 8. Like, come on. Well,
so if we do see Pegasus open with a scout attack onto the Troll Ravager, I think the Avalanche comes out, you clear out most of your opponent's board, they throw down 3 War Chef and kind of do what they can with that, and then we get to see ASOL come out next turn. And then I think maybe DK does get to sort of turn the tide of this matchup, but it looks like Pegasus actually going to play around that and not go for the scout attack. War Chef buff up this Genevieve out of the range of the Avalanche. Wow. And this is something that I've noticed players doing a lot more recently, where when you have Relentless Pursuit, you skip the scout attack and leave yourself that as an option if you do play the Relentless Pursuit later on in that turn.
Yeah, I actually see that more often than you'd think. It does kind of stink that you don't get that second scout attack. You can't do a scout before your first attack and then a scout before your second attack. But it makes sense because it kind of catches your opponent a little bit more off guard. Obviously, having 2 attacks on backup as opposed to 1. And I feel like most of the time your opponent isn't expecting a Relentless after you've already skipped your scout attack. But, from what you just said, we have been seeing it a lot more. I tend to agree. So that is something I feel like players should start playing around a little bit more.
Pegasus looks physically pained, understands that he has a potential at lethal this turn depending on what DK has in hand, but if you throw down a War Chef or even just play this Relentless Pursuit and your opponent has an Ice Quake, the game is just over.
Yeah, Icequake would hurt big time. Well,
But now Pegasus knows there's no Icequake because we're down to
yep.
6 mana.
You got to remember too, because I mean we don't have access to the deck list, but Pegasus might know that there is no Icequake main deck because the only ones that we saw I think were Trundle's Icequake.
Yeah.
So there might
It's
not
not
even be any
unheard
in
of
there.
for this deck to main deck it.
Oh no, yeah, I agree. You know, at least maybe just one copy. Obviously would do work in this matchup, but we saw the first one was actually passed on. And now, I mean, DK just in not the greatest position here. This Avalanche not gonna do anything. The Relentless Pursuit. Sorry, the Avalanche will technically kill the Fleet Feather Tracker, but we'll see the Relentless Pursuit come out here. And most, is this just lethal here? 6, 7. This is technically I think DK lives with the Hush.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how this Hush plays into everything, but it really does come down to sort of what these War Chefs end up buffing up.
You'd have to
And I
stagger
think
the War Chefs. If he avalanches, you just have to stagger the War Chefs to buff a unit and then pull both pillars with the War Chefs, I think.
Well, you get to kill a pillar with the Genevieve because you still have that scout attack.
Oh, that's right. There's still a scout attack. Okay, yeah, I think this is always lethal then. Yeah, with that scout attack, this should always be lethal. So I think you do have to actually hush the Genevieve. And if you hush the Genevieve, then you can also hush one of the things that War Chef buffs. So technically you live, I think, by 1. My math is probably completely wrong because we all know how terrible my math is. But I do think hush is what allows DK to live here.
Yeah, I mean, the double Hush should do it. It's a matter of, like, do you Hush now to sort of turn off the scout attack, or do you go ahead and wait? I don't think it makes too much of a difference in the long run because you can Hush with the attack onto the pillar and she still won't kill the pillar, so that just kind of is what it is. You know, you do still maintain 2 blockers going into the actual swing for the turn.
And it looks like that is what DK is preparing to do here. It seems like you just pull the 6...
Can DK top deck their way out of this, though? Because the Aurelian Soul that comes down next turn doesn't impact this game pretty much at all.
No, that's what we... I mentioned that, I think, when we saw the Lux A-Soul matchups, and it's like, when you have A-Soul on turn 10 and you're behind like this in card advantage and just tempo on field, it's such a bad card. It's, like, basically worthless because you have to play it and then pass priority back over to your opponent before you can even play one of the Celestial cards you get from him. So, yeah, I don't think... I mean, if he does play Avalanche, maybe not Avalanche, Icequake, then maybe Icequake? I
Maybe.
think?
I mean, the Genevieve is going to get buffed out of range again by the War Chef. So she's going to go up to 4 HP going into the next turn, so I don't even think Icequake would do it.
Trundle, I think, is like just not enough. I think if he top decks a Trundle, it's just too slow.
If you can survive without playing the Hush here, then you can top deck Icequake into Icequake Avalanche, and that will definitely at least wipe your opponent's board. But I do think that the second Hush is probably going to have to get played here. And if DK had a little more mana, you know, it wouldn't have been out of the question to Hush one of his own Ice Pillars to take the Vulnerable off of it and then block the Genevieve with it. The problem is that you would need to Hush both of them because there is that Challenger on the Fleet Feather Tracker.
So here we go, yeah. So,
Yeah, it looks like this is just going to be lethal.
Oh, so it's lethal even with Hush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can only take 1 damage off the board, and that is not going to be enough, and that is going to be Pegasos denying the 3-0 and bringing this one up 2-1.
Wow. All right. Pegasos taking it home there.
And it looks like we're going to have another Lux A-Soul Mirror.
Yeah. So, yeah, we haven't seen any A-Soul decks today. Well, now we see a ton of A-Soul
We are seeing
decks.
our 5th A-Soul deck of the day.
Now we're seeing plenty of A-Soul decks. And, yeah, it looks like... So, wait, I'm sorry. Did you just say this is another Lux A-Soul Mirror?
Based on the cards in their opening hands, I would assume so.
Oh, yeah, Remembrance and Radiant Guardian. That makes sense. It's interesting that people... It's looking like, in Korea anyways, a lot of them are gearing more towards the Lux A-Soul, where we definitely saw Lux A-Soul in the US and EU as well, but I don't think it was as prevalent as we're seeing in Korea.
I think it's been picking up steam over the last couple of days, but aside from that, Korea's always liked Lux.
So kind of like BBG.
Yeah, BBG, arguably, no, BBG belongs to Demacia. No other region can claim him.
I feel like BBG's always like a new format comes out, and his first thought is to make like this Lux mid-range deck, like all the time.
Okay, so we don't see the Shield Bearer come out, saving up for that turn 3 Remembrance, and because he did play this Solari, Kamdong not going to have the sort of return Remembrance available. And I feel like with all the units that have come out, so that now we are up to 5 hits off Remembrance as opposed to 3, it definitely feels like a lot more of a roll of the dice of what can I get out here. And actually just not going to be an attack from DK. I think understanding that if you do attack with the Moose, then a return Remembrance could come out of Kamdong. And if that hits Radiant Guardian, you would be in a rough spot.
Yeah, Remembrance in general, always kind of a hard card to play around. I mean, it's basically you're telling yourself, I can't kill my opponent's units. But like that's kind of how you win the game too. So it's kind of a interesting concept to actually try to play around Radiant Guardian. We do see the Radiant Guardian come out on the side of Kamdong though.
And now DK's in sort of this awkward spot where my opponent has Remembrance and single combat mana. Is just going to pass the turnover. Could Hush it this turn to get the trade onto it, but that still doesn't feel good. You're trading your Remembrance and your Hush for just your opponent's Remembrance. I guess you could say that you're also trading it for the Solari, but that is a card that is a lot less impactful than Hush.
All right,
Ooh,
and
it's his own 5/5 tough.
Yep, Cavalry. So another unit that will be able to, at least for the time being, trade for this Radiant Guardian. But we do see the Solari Priestess come down. Man, okay, now I know what you're talking about with that graphic, and God, does it look so sweet being able to pull that up on the opponent's side as well.
Yeah, SJW, where's your graphic for that when we've got 2 hands?
Whoa, okay, all right, that's all right. All right, well, now, is that a challenge? I think I got to do that now.
Oh, I didn't say it was a challenge, but
great,
I'm just saying, the technology is now out there and you don't have it.
All right. It looks like I'm looking to try to do that next time. I hear you.
So far, just kind of a stalwart matchup here, a little Mexican standoff, neither player really willing to attack. And I've always kind of been curious about Runeterra versus other card games where, in Magic, it's pretty easy. Both of you are building up these bigger and bigger boards, and then no one wants to attack because of the way the blocks line up. With there being a board limit in Legends of Runeterra, eventually it feels like there is a breakpoint. One player gets to play a unit that's just bigger than everything else, and attack with that, start to soften up the board, and then eventually we'll see each player go in. But so far, we're just passing back and forth, and eventually hand space is going to catch up to them. But it looks like these players are just kind of saving up for this ASOL turn.
Yeah, and turn 7 here, so he's still a couple turns away from these Aurelian Souls being able to hit the board. So we'll see what both players decide to go with next. I don't know. I mean, both players, it seems like, are just going to end up stalling out, right? I mean, especially on the side of DK, we see a lot of spells in hand. 2 ASOLs actually on the side of DK. Do we actually see an Aurelian Soul champion spell come out this game?
Probably.
I hope
and
so.
Descend the Skies is absolutely insane. One thing that I did notice out of DK at the very least is that it feels really awkward not attacking, not spending mana, and just passing back and forth when you have something like a Guiding Touch in hand, where you are playing these cantrips in a mana-based game and you are just passing with 8 mana open.
Yeah, you and these cantrips, man. You hate these cards, huh? They're just like, you hate these in card games. Is it just...
I
Legends of Runeterra specifically, or like other games too?
It's just mana-based card games, and part of it is for so long in the last game that I played, I had to put up with players, anytime a cantrip came out, they'd be like, oh, this is so good. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead, put that in a deck and tell me what you're cutting for it. And nobody ever had an answer, and there were just so many instances of every time a new cantrip came out, the player base would erupt like, oh, finally, we got some draw power. And it's like, that's not draw power, bud. This isn't what you're looking for. Yeah. This isn't going to turn your deck from a pile into something real.
Yeah, right.
And maybe it's just because Force of Will was a very fast-paced game. You really couldn't afford to play that mana inefficiently. But maybe Legends of Runeterra is a little bit different, especially because these cantrips do other things. The Guiding Touch heal onto a unit can actually be a bit of a blowout, save you a little bit in those aggro matchups. Pale Cascade doubling as a combat trick. They're a lot more effective than just, 1 mana, draw 1.
Yeah, and spell mana being a thing in Legends of Runeterra kind of puts a little bit of a curveball on utilizing things like that. But we do see the Grizzled Ranger here going in for the attack, so we'll see if DK, or what DK decides to block with here. Plenty of options on his side of the field. So this, it's very much kind of like a stalemate here. it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. We actually see both players with 2 Ace Soul in hand too. So this is just going to be, all right, we're at turn 10. Then we're going to start trading cards and who's got the better hand. We could even see 2 Descend the Skies. And we actually barely missed out. See, I want to see the animation. That's the thing. Because we barely missed out in another game. Somebody actually forfeited before we saw the Descend the Skies go off. So we'll see if we actually see the animation here. But this is just going to be a lot of cards on the field on the side of both players. So a Descend the Skies would actually do a lot of work for both players at this point.
So I looked it up to make sure that we were saying the name right, and it's actually the Skies Descend.
Oh, sorry, it's the Skies Descend.
Yeah,
I knew that.
We a little bit of out of order with the wording there.
I knew that.
Oh, you did? Yeah, because you just said it like 7 times.
I was testing you. I was testing you to see if you'd catch me on it. That was the thing.
Well, I did.
So
I feel like DK reasonably can go for some attacks here, but I'm not sure that you necessarily need to risk it. You know, you are sitting on 2 Aurelion Souls. You feel like you're in a pretty good spot because you have the Hush available to get rid of your opponent's Aurelion Soul spell shield before you actually play that card down. And it is worth noting that because DK has the first priority on turn 9, he will have it on turn 11 and will be the player that gets to play the Descend the Skies first. Though it will cost all 13 mana, he won't actually be able to hush away the spell shield in the same turn.
See the Concerted Strike drawn by DK here. Something to note too, and you know, we don't have access to the deck list, but we do have access to these little champion icons up here. There's only 2 Aurelion Souls on the side of Kamdong in his deck. I mean, we see both in hand. At this point in the game, with like how large these fields are and how large, you know, both players' hands are, I feel like that extra Aurelion Soul might actually give DK the advantage in this matchup if they just start trading souls back and forth.
Let's see what they can invoke, and it is going to be the Meteor. It's actually called Supernova,
no,
but you know what I mean.
I was going to say, the big boy is Supernova. That's the
I had to turn the
too.
page, yeah. I mean, it looks like a Supernova.
Yeah. So we'll see what Kamdong decides to do, if he's going to return the favor with an Ace Soul of his own. You got to figure DK is expecting this as well. He's got to know that his opponent has an Ace Soul in hand at this point in the game. And I mean, can you ever not play Aurelion Soul here? Is there a way that he can deal with this? I don't think he can.
In theory, he can play a Radiant Guardian, hush the Ace Soul, and Concerted Strike to try and kill it. But that loses to so many things like Pale Cascade and Single Combat that I don't think you can realistically go for a play like that.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of cards and resources committed just for the sake
actually,
of getting rid of Ace Soul.
Oh no, so I was going to say it doesn't lose to Single Combat, but it actually does because the Ace Soul can Single Combat one of the units, will buff himself up thanks to the Fury. Mm-hmm. And then will survive the Concerted Strike at 1 HP.
Well, we also have this Cavalry too, so...
Yeah. Well, the Cavalry can't kill either of the Radiant Guardians.
Yeah, actually, okay, so you're saying use both Radiant Guardians with the Tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but all right, so it would have to be the Ace Soul with the Fury then, which, you know, again, Fury, I feel like it's such a... People forget about that. It's an effect, and it matters, and Ace Soul can actually get pretty big with Fury. So we'll see. It looks like that's what Kamdong's going for, because otherwise this Ace Soul has a pretty good shot at leveling here. See how...
Attacking with the 1/2 is a little bit strange to me. I think that's a pretty free block for the Aurelion Soul.
Yeah, I mean, he's actually going to remain at 10 health too by doing that. And there's actually some pretty good trades across the board here. I don't think he's really worried. I mean, do you ever block these Radiant Guardians? I think you trade everything else and keep it so you can still level up your Ace Soul, right?
I'm trying to think if there is a downside to... Okay, so we're actually just going to pull back the Radiant Guardians. I was trying to math out in my head how that all plays out, and it was honestly a little complicated. It would have taken me a few more seconds, but thank goodness we don't have to worry about that. And now the blocks seem pretty free on the side of DK, or he could just go ahead and take the damage. There is a lot of healing still in his hand. Doesn't have to worry about that as much. And this is where the sort of stalwart of attacks really plays out for DK. You know, he has a big board. He hasn't taken a lot of damage. Can just take that 7. Isn't really worried about it. And it looks like on the side of Kamdong, we are going for that Hush Concerted Strike that is just going to not work out.
Yeah, I was going to say he kind of has to go for it now. And I don't know if I like that. I think that you kind of just have to return the Aurelion Soul, because now your opponent, if you risk at all, your opponent leveling up their Aurelion Soul before yours, that is a huge advantage. I mean, he's going to have access to all of these 0 mana Celestials way before Kamdong will now.
I guess the good news is... Wait, did we just hush ASOL again?
Wait, what? Did he just...
What does that do for us? Nothing, right? I mean, so like...
No, yeah, that's not like a trick question, I think, Boulevard.
We don't even... So the thing with the Concerted Strike is it at least takes DK off the Ascend the Skies, or the Skies Descend mana for the turn, because they would have had to use the single combat. They'd only be at 11 mana.
Oh, no, he prevented the level up.
Okay, yeah, I forgot that the first Hush only takes away the spell shield. So yeah, the second one does take away that.
Yep.
You could Descend the Skies here. Probably not going to happen.
See, so now I dislike that even more. Like, all right, you can now get Aurelion Soul leveled the same turn that your opponent does on the side of Kamdong, but you literally just wasted a Hush for the sake of, like, just stalling out a turn, which feels kind of bad. So I don't know if I'm crazy about the decision, but it's definitely better than the Concerted Strike, because that would have gotten completely denied with single combat.
Well, the awkward part is Kamdong can't even level the ASOL in the same turn, because if Kamdong plays ASOL here, DK gets to respond with the Sky's Descent. And even if you have single combat to have your ASOL kill my ASOL, that I don't think uses the spell shield. I guess your ASOL gets to survive, but I still have most of my board.
I just want to see... I just want to see it go off. I just want this spell, the animation, to happen. I want it to be a thing.
I think it's a little bit more likely that we get something like a Hush into a Concerted Strike out of DK to kill the ASOL.
Yeah, because actually, if we do see that spell come down, the spell shield on the other ASOL will actually prevent it, which feels kind of bad, not gonna lie. So you could Hush, but you're not gonna be able to play the wait. Is it Descend the Skies? The Skies Descend.
The Skies Descend.
God, I'm always gonna get that wrong now, and always gonna second guess myself whenever I say it. Jesus, the Skies Descend. Got it. Yeah, I mean, he's kind of. Oh, this is really rough. You could just play Hush and then Supernova.
Hush Supernova, Hush into, the Concerted Strike. You could even single combat to pop the spell shield.
Oh, you gotta attack with the Aurelion Soul. This is a really... So game states like this, I hate personally game states like this, because this is like overload of the brain. There's too many decisions to actually make, and none of them ever feel right. And this is why you're always going to end up roping on something like this. Like, you're going to die from indecision is essentially what's going to happen. You're going to lose the game because you can't make a decision. And okay, wow, Kamdong just takes the 10 attack there from the Aurelion Soul.
So now, you have to remove your opponent's ASOL, or you have to play Descend the Skies, or the Skies Descend. The Skies Descend is a little bit awkward if your opponent has something like a single combat.
Yeah, I think Hush into Supernova here is perfectly fine. You also get rid of a Radiant Guardian, which is, to get rid of 2 units like that, those are 2 pretty good units to get rid of, Aurelion Soul and Radiant Guardian, for the value of Supernova. So, and you guarantee at this point now that your Aurelion Soul will level up at the end of this turn. Wow.
Okay, so we're actually just going to go ahead and Supernova the 2 Radiant Guardians, and that will prevent the ASOL level up anyway. It does take us off of anything that can kill the ASOL. No Concerted Strike going to be able to come out, but I definitely don't hate this. It will also force your opponent to overdraw, actually, because they will get that Aurelion Soul Celestial at the start of the turn.
I actually really like this, right? So, like you said, the overdraw, but... Oh my God! Yeah, this does so much. This is actually better than getting rid of the Aurelion Soul. You don't.
I don't know about getting. I don't know if it's better than getting rid of the Aurelion Soul.
No, I think so, because now you have Hush still on backup. Hush is kind of like, in this matchup, your get out of jail free card. Like, no matter what, you can prevent the Aurelion Soul for leveling up a turn, right?
Right.
And yours is leveling up now. So I think I love this, and this goes to the point that we've said previously. Aurelion Soul is actually not even that great. Like, he's actually okay with just keeping it on the board. And when I say not that great, I mean the level 1 version is not that great. He's okay with just keeping this 10-10 on board, where otherwise, most other matchups you'd be like, all right, it's 10-10, I want to get rid of this card. But he's actually prioritizing other Radiant Guardians.
This is an awkward position for both players mana-wise. So Kamdong can't Pale Cascade because he'll be 1 mana shy of still leveling the ASOL. DK is going to get the ASOL level. Kamdong doesn't have the Sky's Descent mana either. Unless he gets a Moonsilver off the ASOL, does get a second Supernova instead. And I think we're just going to see that Supernova fired off at the leveled ASOL. Oh, Living Legends.
Wow. That is... Wow. You don't even care about burning a card. You're like, I just got Living Legends. This is fine.
Solari Shield Bearer burned on the side of Kamdong and Single Combat burned on the side of DK. But, you know, when one person has a leveled ASOL and the other one doesn't, I'm trying to think of a comparable argument because, like, you can't level a Karma and not have your opponent's Karma also level. I think Garen is probably one of the more one-sided ones if I have a leveled one and you don't.
Yeah, Garen, yes. In this case, this is nuts. He's going to be able to deplete his entire hand. He's going to be able to fill his entire hand with Celestial cards and be back on full mana. This is going to be too big of a swing, I think, for Kamdong to come back from. Plus, he has another Aurelion Soul that can hit the board. He could actually just play the Aurelion Soul at the end of this turn, too.
He can actually play it after he plays the Living Legends.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He can just he fills his hand, he replays ASOL. This is going to be nuts.
Yeah, so you refill. This is actually insane. So you get to refill your hand, refill your mana, play the ASOL. Now all of your Celestials cost 0 again, and you get to jam them all down.
And rinse and repeat.
Why is it saying that the Supernova won't...
Wait, what?
Remove his units.
Supernova is targeting the Moose
and the ASOL.
And then he's concerted striking and single combating with the ASOL. Is the single combat killing
the single combat's popping the spell shield. This concerted strike is killing the Aurelion Soul, and then I'm not sure why the eye isn't showing Supernova removing the 2 units.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some weird interaction, but I think it's probably, if I were to guess, just a visual bug with the eye. I mean, there's no way this doesn't get removed. We'll see in a second.
Okay, yeah. The eye wasn't...
We were both, like, holding our breath there, like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? But, and... Okay.
I think the Living Legends was a bit of a bait for DK. I mean, you only get the 1 card out of it. You don't actually get to play the Aurelion Soul because the single combat and concerted strike are not only in your hand until the spell resolves, but the mana hasn't been committed to them yet, so it does only find himself with 6 mana after the fact.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking of that. If he does exhaust his whole hand like that. Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense.
But now we get to see the Aurelion Soul come down. I'm trying to scan Kamdong's hand and see if there is a good answer for this, and honestly, I am not finding one, I guess. No, there's really nothing. I mean, you don't have the units on board to kill it with the concerted strike.
Yeah, and I got to go back to that very first turn where we were thinking, okay, does he, we were like, does Kamdong commit 3 resources, Hush, concerted strike, whatever, to remove DK's Aurelion Soul, or does Cam just go ahead and play his own Aurelion Soul and match it, and they both level? And I really think that the better decision for Cam was to just match the Aurelion Soul, get it down, and we're seeing now why that probably was. I mean, this leveled ASOL is just doing work for DK. I mean, yeah, sure, it was only there for 1 turn previously, and it was instantly removed, but he was able to just chain all those spells and use those 0-cost Celestial cards still, and now we're back to square one.
And even if Kamdong plays his own ASOL at this point, it's still not going to level. You are stuck with these weaker units on your side of the board.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing, too, right? Like, back when, that exact game state that I just mentioned, he had the units to level. It's always going to be harder after the fact to get that amount of units on board again to be able to level this Aurelion Soul.
And I'm pretty sure the Scourge is just going to be lethal here, if I'm correct. That does give all of your other units +2/+2 and Overwhelm.
Oh, that's right. That's what that does. Not to mention, we do have Living Legends that is 100% active and is definitely going to get him some crazy good cards here in a second for 0 mana.
Living Legends feels like the Karma's Inside of Ages of Aurelion Soul, where you just get buried in the advantage that it provides. As well as the fact that it's going to get you extremely high priority targets. Can't even just living legends into the hush for the mana so that you can actually go ahead and get rid of the not only the buff on this golden sister but the lifesteal as well. And I would have to assume that DK is just going to pick this one up for his team here, move on into the top 4. Not seeing anything out of Kamdong. It was just the one player leveled Aurelion Soul and the other one did not.
Yep, and here's the Living Legends. What do we got? Lots of good stuff.
And the Hush actually going to stop the Concerted Strike from killing the Scourge. Can go ahead and play another Scourge over one of his Solari Shield Bearers, and that is just going to be way too much damage. DK of Team SSD will be taking his team to that top 4.
Wow.
Even going to Comet just to get the guys out of the way.
Yeah. Why not? I have 0 mana cards. How often do you get 0 mana cards in your hand? You might as well play them when you have the shot. Wow. Yep. Obliterate, because why not? Come on, he's at 0 mana. Put him out of his misery. He can't do anything. You got so many overwhelmed units.
Even hovering
like,
the Lux.
Yeah, he's like, wait, do I play? This is, listen,
what?
You know when you're playing League of Legends, you gotta secure the kill. You gotta secure the kill. This is kill secure.
There's the Scourge number 3 with the Living Legends.
So wait, all right, now, all right, if you're gonna wait, please play please play it. Please.
DK, please.
Please. Oh, you might as well. You already went down this path. Just do it.
DK is aping out right now, and it's just it could even if this Written in Stars grabs an Aurelion Soul, we could actually see the Sky Descend for an overkill of something like 200 damage.
Oh my god, I really wanted to see that.
Yeah, what did that put him at -81?
Wait, would the Skies Descend have cost 0 too? I think it would have cost 0 by then.
No, it would have cost. Oh, actually, maybe.
Or 0.
I don't think it can cost 0. I think the least it can cost is 3.
Is it? Is that what it